Alright, welcome back everybody to Potterthon 10 benefiting the Trevor Project, the only place on the internet where you can donate not only to a good cause but donate to Flo in a maid's costume at the same time. However, that is not the only incentive. Henrik will be doing an HP5 GBA any percent bonus run tomorrow if we raise another $300. So if you have some money to spare and are considering donating, also consider putting it towards that or any of the other incentives. We've just had some Lego HP, but we have some more to go. We have um, the collection, the year one with Wario. Welcome in.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, I will be running on LEGO Harry Potter Collection. It's the remastered version combining both LEGO Harry Potter Years 1 through 4 and LEGO Harry Potter Years 5 through 7 into one game for modern consoles.
Right, sounds good. If you are ready, I can give you a countdown.
Perfect.
All right. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good luck.
Thank you. Right, so today we are doing a year 1 run. So it's Sorcerer Stone Story. I'm very fortunate that Paxo and Seed were able to commentate a bit of this before me because the first portion of this will look very similar to their run. There are some minute differences. Instead of trying to collect as many studs and gold bricks as possible, we're instead trying to complete the first 6 levels and complete year 1 as quickly as possible. In this, you also saw that Paxo was skipping cutscenes. We're just doing a standard story run, so we will be watching cutscenes as we go. This first one's a little tedious, clocking in at a little over 2 minutes, but it just follows the movies as they go through the Sorcerer's Stone. We'll see a lot of similar tech to Captain Paxo and Seed's run, except we're going to play the back half of year 1 that they're able to cut out early because they're just aiming to get a certain amount of gold bricks, and there will be little nuances in between that I'll bring up as we get there. I see a comment about timer ending. So timer ends in the last game, in the last level, when you do the last heart of damage to the boss battle. So of course in the end we're finishing up by facing down Professor Quirrell as Voldemort, and so the timer ends when we deal that last heart of damage. But yeah, right now we're just watching the cutscene, which is the kind of beginning of the movie. This is fairly standard for any individual year run, where going into the first level, you're watching the start of the movie. Now, obviously we've skipped some parts. We didn't watch, the scene at the zoo, and now we're waiting for Harry to get his letter, or more specifically, Hagrid to show up and give Harry his letter. As soon as he does that, we will gain control and be able to start. Just as Paxo and Seed mentioned, this run is also 1P2C heavy, so that means 1 player, 2 controllers, which is I will have both players dropped in and be playing as both of them at once, despite being only 1 person. And movement will start just as we enter the Leaky Cauldron here. So, one key difference between this level and Paxo and Seed's run is that instead of trying to collect as many studs as possible and attain the True Wizard, little bonus at the end of the level for the gold brick, instead we're trying to collect as little studs as possible. And the reason for that is we have to watch all cutscenes at the end of this level. So anything that says that we got gold bricks, or we finished collecting or we earned the True Wizard status, as well as watching how many studs we collect, kind of fill up our pot. Instead, what we're going to do is finish with as little studs as possible so that we don't have to watch that at all. You'll see here, if we finish the level with 0 studs, we skip those cutscenes entirely. So, now we are entering Gringotts, and this is the scene where Harry is finding out that he owns a small fortune from his parents. So we'll watch a little cutscene here, and this will give us control of a new character who is very important to this run because he is, I believe, the only character in the game that's able to open key vaults. Now, I see a question asking if there's any specific reason I run on Switch. It's the console I own. It would be much faster if I decided to run on something like the Xbox Series X, but I don't own one. I grew up with the Switch, and that's the console I own, so that's what I choose to run on. They are currently remastering it to add it, I believe, for PC, so perhaps when it comes out on PC I will switch to that, but for now I'm content running on Switch. So, as I said, Griphook has the ability to open these little locks. He has a bank key. Hagrid also has a special property in this, in that he has this kind of super strength, which allows him to pull these little levers that look orange over here to the left. There are very few characters that can do this naturally. You'll see that we end up learning how to make a strength potion later in the game so that any character can pull these levers. And now we're heading into the basement of Gringotts, where we're going to see our first piece of kind of questionable tech. So here, I'm jumping off the ledge with player 1, and that will get rid of my studs. And you'll see I'm switching just at the last moment, and that's a little bit quicker because it still allows me to lose the studs while also switching characters and being able to do it again. So it's about twice as fast. You see that I had a little mix-up, so I switched before I actually died, and so I didn't lose the studs for that jump. But if you time it right, you can lose both the studs and switch characters. And
do we have time for a quick donation?
Yes, that's perfect.
All right, we have a $10 donation from Portal Guy 1000, unfortunately without a comment. No, it's actually, the comment is, Renee is my mommy. Thank you so much, Portal, for the donation. And, well, not so much thank you for making me read that out, but still, appreciate the generosity.
This is a great cause, and again, as our lovely hosts have said, if you have the bandwidth to donate, please do. It's such a great cause, and I'm so glad to be a part of this, supporting what we do. So we're finishing up year 1. This is the outro cutscene, and this is just when Harry gets his wand, his hat, and Hedwig, and then we will end the level, and as you'll see, we have to wait for every kind of end scene to play, and you'll see that we don't have any small cutscene for collecting studs, and that was the point of finishing the level with 0 studs. So we get our little level complete gold brick. And then we should get a continue story button. Normally you would have to watch the studs fill up your meter, but because we have no studs, we don't watch that. And now we're getting to the scene where Harry is actually getting to Hogwarts, which is just a little bit more downtime. And the run appears like it's on decent pace. On the topic of donations, I will be donating $2 for every run I bop on the board during this run. I believe this is the most popular category on LEGO Harry Potter Collection, with I think 18 runners. So every person I bop, I will donate $2 to the cause myself. In the meantime, Paxo mentioned at the end of his run that one of the best categories to get into is all bonus levels, because the tech is really interesting, but it's also a short run. I would argue that this year 1 story is also a great run to get into. The time for it is below an hour, and depending on whether you're on collection or the standard mode, it's a very simple run. The tech is fairly easy to pick up on, and you'll see all of it as we go. But it's very beginner friendly. There's basically no barrier to entry, and you can even have a good run without performing any of the major tech in this. So Here we're watching the Sorting Hat scene, and we're gonna see here the kind of start of the rivalry between Malfoy and the Gryffindor gang. I'm not sure exactly what to call them. Ron, Harry, and Hermione. One thing this game differs in from the books and movies is that Ron, Hermione, and Harry are all friends from the start. So when we get into the castle here in this after this cutscene, we'll actually have the ability to play as all three, despite in the books and movies, Hermione doesn't really join the friend group until after the troll enters the dungeon. So we're going to gain control right in the Gryffindor boys dormitory with Harry and Ron. We just need to hit some cobwebs to leave the room. And then we're going to try and leave the Gryffindor room. And as you'll see, we have Hermione waving to us on the side. Now this little dresser, I guess, blocks the way, but with some good movement, we're able to hit this painting and drop the trousers off this wizard, and that will open the door for us. So we're now heading to our first little lesson or spell, which is Wingardium Leviosa. There is one trick here that I am omitting for safety, and it's something known as Fluffy CSS. By leaving this room at the right time, you can actually skip this little cutscene right here, but if you time it wrong, you actually soft lock your game. So for safety, we'll not be going through that, but if you look at some of the top runs, that's exactly what they do. And one thing that is fairly important when you start this game is 1P2C, as you start to get into it, is very difficult, but one thing that can be made easy is in these little transition moments like this, just switching and picking up only one controller at a time. It makes it a little bit easier to grasp, and usually there's a character that spawns a little bit farther towards where you want to go. And so if you play with that controller, you just save yourself a hot second, and you can kind of take a break from all the 1P2C and how much that tends to hurt our brains. So we're entering the Charms classroom now, and this is where we'll learn our first Wingardium Leviosa spell, or I guess our first spell, which is Wingardium Leviosa. Every single spell you learn in this game can either be bought from the shop with studs, which are your kind of currency, or they are learned within a classroom in Hogwarts with a little puzzle such as this. So here, Ron has managed to stick a handful of students onto the chandeliers, and it's our job to make sure they get down by using Wingardium Leviosa on these little weights to drop the chandelier. So there's a little bit of tech we'll do using 1P2C, which is, if you noticed, we just had a little cutscene that played when we triggered the weights. Our goal is to, instead of having to watch this twice now for rescuing the last two students, we're going to time it so that we only have to watch it once. And if I did that right, yep, we're rescuing both students at once and we only have to watch one cutscene. And so that's the first little bit of time save in this. And as you'll see, we will add our Wingardium Leviosa to our little spell wheel here and get a gold brick for completing the lesson. So now we will be heading to the second level, and this is, in my opinion, the hardest portion of the game is you're starting to learn it. I call it blocks, and we need to build these little blocks on the bottom to open this bottom gate while simultaneously doing some parkour so that we can trigger this door later. And if I've done it right, we'll skip the cutscene of opening the door while this other cutscene of opening the lion's mouth occurs. And we'll now just head in towards the main hall. Now, one thing that you normally do here in any percent is you start to trigger things that are used later. So you'll start to open a doorway on the left side, and instead what we'll do is we'll just go straight into the room because we don't need it for this run. And there we are. And this is the introduction cutscene to our second level. If you notice, these loading screens have little cauldrons in the bottom. A cauldron appears when the game takes longer than a certain amount of time, something like 4 seconds to load. You'll notice I get a handful. That's because I'm playing on Switch. A newer gen console such as the Xbox Series X or the PS5 will have shorter load times, and so you get less cauldrons that we say. The LEGO Harry Potter standard board, so LEGO Harry Potter years 1 through 4 on speedrun, uses load remove times, but because we're playing on console, we don't have the ability to smoothly remove times, and so everything's done in real time. So Switch has a little bit of a handicap in playing the game. So there's a lot of tech that just happened, and the first one is, I'm about to do it again, we call it a pet jump, and by dropping a pet and then removing them into your party and jumping, you actually get the ability to jump twice. And that becomes useful in a lot of spaces, but we're actually going to find an easier method to cause double jumps. The other method that I did was what we call wrong warping, and that gets its name from the Super Mario speedruns, where if you enter a portal in the right way, enter a pipe in the right way, you can skip to a different portion of the map. What that does is, if you Wingardium Leviosa a fellow character while they're falling off a cliff, it will teleport their character to the 0, 0 coordinate in that room. So you'll see it used a handful of times, but that's what wrong warping is, and it's a very useful piece of tech because it ends up skipping about a minute to a minute and a half of that level. So now we're entering our first boss battle of the run, which is against this troll. Hermione, instead of being called a name, as she does in the books and movies, Malfoy throws a piece of chocolate at her, and she is trapped herself in a bathroom with the troll, and it is our job as Ron and Harry to knock out the troll and get her out, using our newly learned Wingardium Leviosa spell. So you're going to see me run forward with Ron here. As Paxo and Seed mentioned, we're going for what is called early aggro, which is causing the troll to turn towards us and swing early and come towards us. As you see, he instead attacked the stall. If you, not sure if it's RNG or if there's actual skill to it, if you do it well or get lucky, the troll will just come towards you without first heading towards Hermione's stall. So it just saves a small handful of seconds, something like 8 seconds. But of course, in a speedrun, any time save is great. Alright, so there is 1 heart of damage. Here we'll get our second. Now, there is a chance, if you are poorly positioned, that the troll throws a second block instead. But because we were far enough back, the troll didn't do that, and we're able to just run forward and get the last piece of damage by using the troll's club against itself. And this is the last cutscene of the level, where our teachers come in and take everyone out of the bathroom safely. Now, in the books and movies, this is kind of the start of the friendship between Harry, Ron, and Hermione as a group, but as I mentioned, we already kind of have that. So the only thing that changes here is we progress the story and get to move on to our second spell, which is arguably the first or second most important spell in not just this category, but the any percent category as well. And again, as I mentioned, on a newer console we would have either no cauldron at all or a shorter cauldron time. So here I'm just going to jump up, around, and down, entering this room. I will switch to Ron and head towards Charms again. Now, this is the portion of the run that is the hardest 1P2C wise. Our goal here is to collect these little blocks around the room using Lumos and put them in their exact positions. Now, the room is divided into an upper part and a lower part, and you're going to use one character up top and one at the bottom, and it becomes fairly hard to balance between the two. And so I have spent a good handful of hours just practicing this. Doing the room right before the game's about to save, exiting to the menu, and going back and trying it again. Get that right. So then what I'll do is I will switch from Ron to Hermione so she can come up here and assist Harry in pulling down these blocks for him. And there we go, that was not bad. And we'll add that to our second spell in the wheel, and we'll of course get another gold brick for our efforts. There's a little bit of downtime while I head to the next room if you want to mention anything about the Trevor project.
All right, I always do. The Trevor Project, which we are raising money for during this Potterthon, is the leading suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ plus young people. They have a variety of services they provide. The most important one is providing crisis services, so people who struggle can reach out to the Trevor Project 24/7, 365 days a year, and they're available for contact, and they will help people who struggle mentally, help them through the tough period. But that's not all they do. They also do research, they educate, they raise public awareness, and they're working hard on advocacy to make this world a bit of a kinder place for LGBTQ young people. So that's an amazing cause. If you have some money to spare, please consider donating to it. And when you do, also consider putting it to one of our incentives. We currently have $300 to go on the HP5 GBA Any Percent run by Henrik. We have another $473 to go to get Flo into that maid cosplay at the end of the event. And we currently have $148 to go to make Lily's Hogwarts Legacy run from story mode to upgrade that to hard difficulty mode. So, an amazing cause, and please consider donating if you can.
Thank you. So, we just finished up our strength potion. So as I mentioned, Hagrid is one of the characters in the game with the ability to pull those levers without needing a strength potion, but now we have the ability to pull it with any character, so long as they can drink a potion. Now I'm attempting to do a little Lumos jump so that we can head to Transfiguration, do a little bit of a sequence break. I do not seem to be too lucky. It's a little bit of a finicky jump, but there you go. And the Transfiguration is the most important spell in the game because it allows us to clip up and through walls. Because when we transfigure something, we'll either transfigure them into a rat or a frog, and that hitbox is much smaller, so when we get up to a wall and then return to a human form, we'll be clipped into the wall. Now, as I mentioned, we can either turn things into a rat or a frog. In this split, it is much, much faster to turn things into a rat than it is to turn them into a frog because they travel faster. So, the name of the game here is RNG and trying to turn as many things into rats as possible. And I have actually gotten very lucky. We are going 4 for 4 on rats. As I say that, of course. So there's 4 rats, that's pretty good. Obviously standard is 3. But it can add up to a difference of almost 20 seconds just based on whether you get rats or frogs. And now we're going to head to something that seems kind of pointless, which is Lumos Solum. As you may have noticed in our Lumos split, we used Lumos to clear some vines to kind of unearth those pieces. Now we'll be getting Lumos Solum, which allows us to get rid of Devil's Snare, which is pretty much the same thing as those vines, except people can get caught in Devil's Snare. So we're heading outside to the Herbology room now. Lumos Solum does not change the ability to Lumos jump, so that's the kind of jump I was doing to get into Transfiguration. Lumos Solum does not affect that at all. Lumos jumping is the more consistent method to pet jumping. Now, collection can be a little bit finicky in this room. If you noticed in Paxo and Seed's run, well, Paxo's run with Seed commentating, the goal is to kind of destroy a bunch of plants, but in order to do that, you need to spam pretty much as fast as possible. If you spam your buttons too fast, the game can crash. So we have to play it a little bit slower than we do on PC. But that's all right. It's better for the game to not crash than to go fast here. And so here the Devil's Snare is creeping up behind Ron, and it will just grab him and pin him to the wall behind him. And Lumos Solum allows us to get rid of those vines that Lumos does not normally allow. So we're gonna use Lumos Solum on that first vine, and then come in the back and kind of Wingardium Leviosa this wagon. Now, for some reason, the rest of the parts of this wagon are hidden within these flowers, but once we get rid of all the flowers, we'll be able to Wingardium Leviosa the wagon together, and that will allow us to kind of break through that wall and rescue Ron. And there we go. We've rescued Ron, and we've learned Lumos Solum, which will kind of overlap on our spell wheel with Lumos because they are functionally exactly the same. And as well, we get a little gold brick for our efforts. So, I'll leave here, and then I'm going to switch player 2 to Ron. We're going to do something you might have caught earlier, which is called a pet warp. So it's kind of the dual to a wrong warp, but instead of warping the player entirely, we're just going to warp their pet. And we're going to do that right after we finish learning how to ride our brooms. So this is the scene in the books where Neville loses his Remembrall, and Malfoy is kind of picking on Neville for it, and ends up throwing it into the air for Harry to kind of demonstrate his broom skills and catch the Remembrall. Here, Malfoy opts to throw it to a couple of gargoyles, which do functionally the same exact thing. Now, Harry is one of very few characters that are able to use their wands while on their broom. The reason we're doing this with just Harry and not Ron and Hermione as well right now is because they're not able to hit things while on their brooms. They're kind of poor broom riders. The only other characters I believe that can do it in this game are Tom Riddle and Victor Crumb, but if somebody in the audience knows differently, feel free to correct me. We got a little unlucky. The goal is to hit the petals of that flower, which we just did not seem to get lucky to do. And here we'll watch the same clip 4 times of Harry catching this Remembrall, and we'll learn how to broomstick fly. So, that completes all of the kind of things we learn in this category. The rest of the category is now just doing levels. And so here's that pet warp. The pet warp allows us to skip a kind of loading barrier that would transition us into this room, so it's a little bit faster to do the pet warp there. So here we're heading into what I call ballroom, or more specifically, we're going into what I call the ballroom skip. Normally, you would make a little strength potion and knock down this little wall and just simply, walk through and complete that room as normal. But using some clever Lumos jumps, we can get up behind the wall, and then by dropping Scabbards and recalling it, the game thinks your character hitbox is traveling between you and Scabbards, and so that passes through the load plane and gets you into the next room. And now we'll head into our third level, titled A Jinxed Broom, which is when Harry loses his control of the broom in this Quidditch match. And here we'll see our first use of the Transfiguration spell. As I mentioned, the Transfig spell allows us to turn into a rat or a frog temporarily and shrinks our hitbox. We will use this to get close to the wall behind us and allows us to jump up that wall and skip a little part of the level.
Do we have time for a quick donation?
Yes.
All right, we have a $5 donation from Maddie without a comment. Thank you so much for the donation. We really appreciate it. It's all going to a great cause, so thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. So as we're about to see here, Harry's about to lose control of his broom, and that will just kind of start off the level. Again, just as in the books and movies, Ron and Hermione believe Snape is doing it, but if you look behind, you can actually see Quirrell moving his mouth and hands as well. And here we go. Now, the thing about Transfiguration is that it feels kind of slow because there's not much we can do. In the meantime, we just kind of have to wait for Hermione to turn back into a human. But, come on. Yeah, sometimes like that, the game will kind of stop you from being able to jump. I don't really know why that is, but usually you're still inside the wall and continue jumping as normal. And so here, we're going to trigger this painting, and we're going to do one more Lumos jump. And that will get us into the final room, where we'll do a small cutscene skip. So, normally we'd have to watch a little cutscene of those stairs coming together, but if we leave the room and come back in, we skip that entirely. And now we'll do another Lumos jump to get up here. So normally there's a little cutscene skip you can do there to skip this outro cutscene, but if you time it wrong, you have to replay the entire level, so I'm opting to skip that for now. Now, this doesn't matter in a category where you're able to skip cutscenes. So, for example, the fast story category allows you to use a cheat called No Cut, which, if you saw the run yesterday that I did, simply allows you to skip all cutscenes in the game. And so, doing a cutscene skip like that is actually pointless. But, yep, here we will have to watch this entire cutscene and finish the level. And so, we are now halfway done the game levels-wise, but we are well over halfway done time-wise. We have, I want to say, about 15 minutes left time-wise. So we're at the point in the story now where everyone is going home for Christmas, and that means we're going to get the last kind of important item in this run. Now, ironically, we don't actually use the item in the run, but if we were to play this normally without doing transfig skips, we would have to use it. And that item is, of course, Harry's invisibility cloak. We're instead going to perform a transfiguration skip in the next level that bypasses using the invisibility cloak entirely. So as soon as we walk back into the Gryffindor common room, we will start the introduction cutscene to the 4th level, which is aptly titled the Restricted Section. So here Ron gets his kind of infamous sweater from his mom, and Harry gets one of the Deathly Hallows. So with this, of course, in the story, Harry goes to explore Hogwarts and eventually comes upon the restricted section, and that's exactly what we're going to watch here, but instead Harry does all the traversing alone. We get a weird little interaction here where Filch can't see Harry when he has the invisibility cloak on, but Harry nods his head and Ron's able to see Harry in order to go into the library. Which, fun fact, that staircase is actually heading away from the library in the game. The library is on the opposite side of the staircase where they're coming from. So, as I mentioned, we're going to do a little transfig skip here, so I'll transfig Ron like that. It does not matter that Harry got eaten by the book, because if all goes well, Ron should be able to jump straight up through this wall, and it's a little precise here, but if I do it right, we should be able to just skip this first room entirely. And I've not done it right, so it was important that Harry got eaten. So I'll need to transfig Ron again and do it. This skip saves a lot of time, so it actually does not matter that it's taking 2 attempts. Normally you would have to put together a potion, as we did in the first level, to blow open the doors. Oh, I am very unlucky here. So, it is much faster to build the book. I believe it's up to something 3 or 4 attempts that it's still faster to do the transfiguration skip versus building our potion. And here I should be able to just trigger the cutscene like that and get to the door. And we'll use transfiguration one more time. Here, the only kind of blockage in the way, there's no eating books, it's that Filch is here. And if Filch catches you, he will... Oh, that's not good. He will not permanently, he will temporarily stun you like that by grabbing a hold of you. In order to free Harry, you need to hit Mrs. Norris with the other character. So here, we're going to use Ron to walk up a pet pipe and get the kind of key to unlock this room. Now, here we're going to go for a cutscene skip. So I mentioned that we skipped one in 1.3. There is one that is not punishing for missing here. And here we're finding the mirror that hides the Sorcerer's Stone. But if we leave the room at just the right time by dropping out Scabbers, did not time it right, we can skip the cutscene entirely. Instead, we'll have to watch it. So after this, we'll have 2 more levels, and then we will be all set for the rest of the run. This is another great time to plug our Trevor project.
All right, yes, absolutely. We are currently raising money for the Trevor project, the leading cause of the leading Jesus. We are raising money for the Trevor Project, who specialize in crisis management for young LGBTQ people who struggle. They are there 24/7, 365 days a year to help those who struggle. And not only do they do crisis management, they also work on advocacy to make the world a bit of a kinder place. They do research, and they specialize in education and public awareness to help get the word out there. So it's a really good cause, and if you have a few dollars to spare, there are no small donations. everything's going to a great cause, so consider dropping them.
Thank you. So here we are going for a ballroom skip again. I'm getting a little bit less lucky. This time it's a little finicky because of how kind of precise everything is. We need to get on top of that little invisible wall there, but we just did. And we'll do exactly what we did the first time by dropping out Scabbers and maneuvering him around. Now, here I'm going to switch into using just one character for now, and you'll see why in the next level. But the next level has a small little trick that we don't see elsewhere in this run, which is called Fang Warping. Essentially, if you've noticed throughout the level, or throughout the run, the other characters will follow player 1. Now, if player 1 gets into a place where the other players aren't able to follow, so here I'm going to do a Lumos jump, and of course, if you're not dropped in, you can't do a Lumos jump. By positioning your party in the right way, the game will give them extra high jumps, and so that will allow us to switch to that character in a place they're not supposed to be. So we're going to skip the first portion of the room by positioning Fang in a better place, which will allow him to kind of warp up onto an upper level that normally you need to build a little staircase, or I think it's a ladder for him to get to. Now, in this, I believe the normal storyline goes that Hagrid has a dragon egg. In this, Hagrid is actually taking care of a sick unicorn, and Malfoy's disturbing them, and they need to go find the unicorn in the forest, as opposed to having to go into the Forbidden Forest as part of a punishment or detention. So here we're going to move Fang over here, and then switch to Hermione. We're going to knock some little vines here, and then do a little Lumos jump. It's a little bit of a hard one. And repeatedly attempt to drop in player 2, and that should get Fang over to where we need to. Now Fang has the ability to dig, which is why we need to get him up. So I'll just drop Hermione back out. That will be important later. And we're going to break down this wall and head into the last room. The last room is also a little fickle. We have 3 Lumos jumps to do, and the second one is fairly hard to get, although just like last night, I managed to get it on the first try, so perhaps it's not as difficult as I make it out to be. But I've been known to struggle quite a bit with that one, and here we unfortunately did not get the positioning right, but you can completely skip using Lumos on those vines by doing a Lumos jump on top of the mole. And so this finishes up the level. It's fairly quick with all the little tricks. Normally you'd need to use Fang, drain a lake, do some other puzzle stuff, but with just a couple of Lumos jumps you simplify the last room. And that finishes up the level, which means we are heading on to 6-6, which is of course, the last level, and as you could guess, that's kind of solving the puzzles that guard the Sorcerer's Stone or the Philosopher's Stone. Now, the reason I dropped out player 2 here is because the 1P2C in this next section is fairly difficult. If you recall from the start of this run when we found Fluffy and had to trigger the painting, the staircase shifted. So in order for the staircase to shift, your entire party needs to be standing on that little landing. Now, doing that maneuver with 2 characters is very difficult, and if you time it wrong, you can actually lose a fair bit of time. So instead I opt to drop out the rest of my party and just let the computers move to where they need to be. And this is the last level. So we are making great pace. Here we are trying to sneak past Fluffy, and it's revealed a little early in the game that Quirrell is the one who has been causing all the chaos around Hogwarts, although it's not quite clear as to why yet. So it's clear that Quirrell used a harp, Ron attempts to use a trumpet, which maybe not the best idea in comparison to a harp, so our goal will be to reconstruct the harp to put Fluffy to sleep. Now there's a convenient man taking a bath in a painting, and we'll use that to use as rubber duck to distract Fluffy for just a second, and that will allow us to build the harp, and that should get us into the kind of next room, which is the room in the book or in the movie with all the devil snare. Now it's shown a little bit differently in the games, where the puzzle in the second room is still to free Ron, but Ron doesn't need to just stay still. Instead, you just need to use Lumos Solum and knock him out. And now we'll head into the kind of key room, where, again, we're going to use Harry on a broom to retrieve our key. This time, the key that we're looking for is not cleverly one that is flying with a broken wing. It's the giant key with a whole horde around it. So we'll get it, stand right about here, and hit the key down, and enter the chest room. Now the chest room has one last use of transfiguration, which we call chest skip. So I'm going to drop Hermione in here, and I'm going to transfigure into Harry, and this is, in my opinion, one of the most difficult transfiguration skips in the game because of just kind of how precise it is. We're going to jump up this wall, wait for Harry to stop sliding around. You can tell by the shadow. Shift a little bit. Ah, I missed it. Unfortunate. So we're going to try it again. But what you are able to do is skip this entire room and go straight into the boss fight. So we'll try it again. I find it's a little bit easier if you are transfigured into a frog because your motion's a little bit more precise. And there we go. So we hit it, and we enter the last room. If you can tell, the audio sounds a little bit off. That's because it's still using the audio from the last room and not the audio of the cutscene. And so here we find out that Quirrell has been a host for Voldemort, and we will attempt to use Harry's touch to take him down. So Quirrell is going to launch his little, fireballs at us, and then he's going to launch a kind of skull, which we can just like the troll, use right against him. We'll touch him with Harry, and that's one heart. The timing, the timer ends when we deal the last heart of damage. Each cycle takes about 30 seconds, give or take, so we're into the last minute of the run. So the first time he launches 5 fireballs, this time he'll launch 7, and the last one he will launch 11. Now, one little time save we'll take advantage of is the game creates little idle animations for characters. In this case, the idle animations are putting your wand away. Now, every time, that means if your wand is put away when you want to use a spell, you need to wait a split second in order to trigger the spell. So if you just saw Hermione put her wand away. So by repeatedly hitting every now and then, the game doesn't think we're idle and won't put our wands away. And so that'll give us just a split second to use Wingardium Leviosa, and will allow us to hit that skull back to him a little quick. If you don't do it quick enough, he may launch extra fireballs, and time. And so that was looks like a 48, was that like a 4807? And that's the end of the run. Thank you so much for having me. It was so great. I enjoyed being here yesterday as well. If you like this kind of LEGO stuff, make sure you check out all the other runners. I believe Paxo, who was on before me, also has another run tomorrow. Make sure you check them out. And thank you again to the host for putting this all together. The Trevor Project is such a great charity, and I'm so happy to be a part of a team raising money for them.
Absolutely. Big GGs. That was a really entertaining watch. And as far as I can tell, a pretty solid time as well.
Thank you.
All right. Um, as you correctly pointed out, there will be more Lego tomorrow. But for tonight, we're gonna move back to the PC games as a Harry Potter 7 Part 1 PC run is coming up by Dino. I unfortunately will be dipping, but don't panic, chat. I will leave you in the very capable hands of Miney, who's been an absolute legend behind the scenes in this event. So it's gonna be great. Um, yeah, thank you to the organizers of this event for having me, and thank you so much to Wario for the fun run. I really enjoyed watching that, and the commentary was great.
Thank you
Thank
so
you to
much.
thank you to everybody who donated. And unless there's anything else we need to say, I think we should go into a transition.